Burn. This is Tim Burn, Almost Live. I'm here with Julie K because she won't let me pronounce your name.
You want me to do it for you?
Yeah, please do it.
Julie Kwiecinski.
Kwiecinski.
Yes.
Kwiecinski.
Yes.
Kwiecinski. I'm going to remember that. It is very Polish.
Very Polish.
And you are the Director of Provincial Affairs. All the provinces or just Ontario?
Just Ontario, which, believe me, Tim, that's enough based on my workload right now.
And I'm going to dive into Ontario's politics in a second, but do you have a Director of Political Affairs for every province?
We do.
You do?
We do. Actually, in Ontario, we have two, myself and Ryan Malot.
How do you divide the workload between the two of you?
We split the key files up, and some of them we kind of work as a team. And we also have our Vice President, Plum Petkoff. We are a small but mighty team, and we work very well together, and we get all of our direction from our membership. We often get the question, how do you know what you're going to focus on? We do mandate surveys for a year.
I've heard this, yeah.
You've heard this?
Yeah,
so
heard
a mandate question.
We're a new member, or a new member again.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, we
congratulations.
5-6 years ago, and we rejoined in the recent month.
I may be biased, but I must say that is a very wonderful decision and much appreciated.
It's always good to have return members, right?
Absolutely. So the mandate questions are basically a yes-no type question. Like, for example, do you believe Ontario should have a small business ombudsman? Yes or no? And they're put forward in an unbiased fashion with pro and con positions. But on top of that, we also do surveys. For example, if we're going into a budget, we may reach out to our members if we need to check the pulse of the issues to ask questions like, what should we focus on? Should it be hydro? Should it be taxes? That sort of thing. But right now, we're heading into a budget next week. Today is kind of an interesting day. If you want to talk about timeliness, Bill 66. Have you heard about Bill 66
and its
impact?
I'm not politically savvy. I'm a businessman who gets affected by the outcome of others and literally lives by the seat of my pants waiting for the outcome. It's why actually I joined the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, because I didn't want to live by the seat of my pants anymore. That makes sense.
That's a great slogan.
Right.
That's a great slogan.
By the way, most entrepreneurs, we all live by the seat of our pants, right?
Yes.
And we live by the events that are put in front of us. And very sadly, we don't plan for those government changes. We would just watch them happen and work it out as it hits us in the face. And that's why the Canadian Federation of Independent Business actually becomes a great maestro for the independent entrepreneur, because you actually can lead that way for us rather than us having any of our efforts focused in a different direction.
Absolutely. And as a small business owner, you want to focus. Your vision is on money. Your business, job creation, paying the bills. You don't need to worry, did Bill 66 get royal assent today because there's something in there that affects my business? Right. Let Julie worry about that. And on that note, a pleasant segue, Bill 66 is the new government's first red tape reduction bill. And there's something in there that's very specific to the construction industry.
Red tape reduction.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Red tape reduction.
Say it 3 times fast. Okay.
Thank goodness for editing, right?
Is it real in its name? Like, does it?
Oh, do we add the word real, or is it real?
No, like, is it like when they say red tape reduction? In my head, my definition of that is that we're gonna chop some crap out of
reducing red tape. And for example, there is a provision in Bill 66 that specifically affects construction industries in Hamilton, Sault Ste. Marie, Toronto, and Waterloo region. And you're probably saying, why?
Why?
I can see by your face.
Okay, why?
Those municipalities have been deemed quote unquote construction employers under the Labor Relations Act. With the passage of Bill 66, and it'll be proclaimed at a later date, so it's not happening right away, but steps are moving toward it. Those municipalities and anybody else, you can no longer be deemed a construction employer. And what that means is that any contracts out there for a public body, whether it's a school board, a hospital, a university, a municipality, you can compete for those contracts. You are exempt from the collective bargaining rules of the construction industry. for the purposes of those contracts. However, the bill was amended after second reading. Municipalities and those other public bodies, they can actually opt out of the rules if they write to the Minister of Labour within 90 days when the bill receives royal assent. So what we're going to be now doing, obviously, and you have to be one step ahead.
Whether you're union or non-union, you can bid for those jobs.
Absolutely. And previously in those municipalities that I mentioned earlier, you were shut out of any of those contracts unless you were affiliated with a certain union. And this was an issue. We've been fighting this for a long time, especially our members in Waterloo Region. We have heard an earful from them about this. And this basically, as you know, competition brings down the price of a contract. So this will actually help municipalities. It will save tax dollars because now anybody can join the party. There are a lot of qualified construction companies out there that are non-union affiliated. Now they can join the party provided that those municipalities
Aren't the unions
don't
up in
opt
arms
out.
about this?
Yes, they absolutely are. I mean, you can look, and again, there's so much.
Does this not set precedent now for companies like Omer's, Cadillac Fairview, who demand unionized labor, that now they can, in the future, look that they could opt out of having union labor?
Not really, because the way this is worded, it's specific to public entities,
Right.
and the list is right in the bill. If anyone's really loves reading legislation
Whoa.
like I do, go right in there.
Do you
There's
actually
a whole
read it?
list. Yes, absolutely. I have to.
I couldn't read that to save my life.
And I'm fortunate because my background, I spent, I think, 11 years in government as a political staffer, working for cabinet ministers, working on the opposition side, working in legislative roles where I had to understand House procedures. So yes, I read bills and I follow their passage through the legislature.
So why would anybody, sorry, and I'm going to dive around now.
Oh, please.
So why would anybody opt out of it? Why would any municipality or hospital, transit, whatever it is, opt out of Bill
Good
66?
question.
Why would they?
Because the union people would make it very difficult for them potentially if they opt out, because those municipalities right now, clearly there are certain unions providing those services under contracts. So I can only imagine, based on the outrage at the committee stage from unions that came forward.
So now peer pressure is the guiding mandate. So if the hospital feels a lot of peer pressure from the unions, they can opt out.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they can.
Okay, sorry, by opt out, you mean?
They can go back to a unionized environment.
Absolutely, just go back to where we are right now,
and
like
force,
the pre-bill,
force out non-union companies.
Bill 66.
Right.
Yeah. So, and this, I suspect,
doesn't that make Bill 66 a moot point if they can opt out for it anyway?
I suspect, and again, now I'm putting on my old strategic hat where you're getting into somebody's political head and trying to figure out strategy.
Right. Absolutely.
I would guess, and again, I'm not
if it's an
100% sure.
NDP run municipality, it's going to opt out, and if it's a conservative municipality, it's going to opt in.
No, I would guess the reason the government did this, very clever. Kudos to them. You're passing the hot potato.
Sure.
Because then you can say, hey,
by the way, they should
it's Sault Ste. Marie's fault. It's not Laurie Scott, the Minister of Labour.
By the way, they should anyway. Listen, I'm all about accountability.
Yeah.
I think that the municipalities should be given more choice. Mm-hmm. Do what you want.
Yeah.
It's like the OMB I always found to be a bizarre tactic, right? The OMB telling some little small town you have to take a Walmart because somebody filed a petition to have a Walmart put there, and the municipality doesn't want it, and the town council is there, and they've been voted by their constituents, and they said no. Why does the OMB get to walk all over everybody? I was always weirded out by the OMB. Same with Bill 66, or prior to that, having the province tell you what you can and cannot hire. Let the municipalities, if it's their money, their funding, you decide what you want to hire. I just find that weird that they can opt out of it, but I guess you're right. Politically speaking, if there's enough peer pressure.
Yeah, it puts the pressure on the municipality, which again, as part of our strategy in defense of our members, because we always fight for our small and medium-sized business members, we have 90 days. So it's interesting. These public bodies, so it's municipalities, school boards, universities, there's a whole laundry list. They only have 90 days to opt out in writing to the minister. And then that opting out
90 days of the bill being signed, or 90 days
of royal assent. And I've been told today, and again, for those people out there who don't know what royal assent is or don't care, it's the lieutenant governor's official stamp on a bill, which we were told will happen today. So the clock starts today.
Did any of them sign out? Did any of them petition out?
I haven't heard anything. And further in the
Why
bill,
would they? Why would they? I mean, listen, I would want the power in the municipality anyway. If I was the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie, I want to be in charge and control of that.
They can still hire the union. Like the union.
Yeah, they can still do it themselves anyway. So it's actually to their advantage because it gives them an opportunity to be more competitive.
Yeah, anybody can play now. So any construction company can put in their bid. And the key here is to make sure, from our perspective.
That's exciting, actually, eh?
Yeah, it is kind of exciting. Yeah. And I like the aspect that this kind of continues. We can continue to fight for our members and say, okay, we've written a letter to the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie. We're following up to make sure that they abide by the new provisions and do not opt out. So it levels the playing field. So if you're a qualified construction company, you should be able to come to the party and put in a bid. And at the same time, more bids, better competition, likely the cost of the project will be lower. Everybody wins.
You're right.
The taxpayer wins.
By the way, so this type of legislation always weirds me out a little bit. Toronto specifically had I don't really have it now. It's been a while since I've been involved in any of their tender processes. Toronto, inside the TTC, which is another entity inside of Toronto, had a part of their tender process was as a contractor, you had to sign a fair, I believe it was called a fair market labor rate. So you had to sign a waiver, a piece, a part of their docket, part of their tender package to sign off that you're paying your on-site staff the fair market wages. So you had to sign this affidavit. I don't know what you want to call it. Yet when they used to submit bids and they used to make a public tender, so fair market rate for door and glass guys, Stadia Industries, one of the companies that we're involved with. If the guys are getting paid $30 an hour, and that's plus all the benefits and all the crap on top of that, TTC was getting tender rates at $35 an hour. There's no way that a company could actually operate at $35 an hour if you're paying your technicians and your service staff $30 an hour or $25 an hour. There's just no way. Workers' compensation, liability insurance, CPP, all that stuff that gets added on. You just couldn't operate that way. And I always wondered how they accepted those tenders with the fair market labor rate. But by the way, even the Glazers union here in Toronto, I mean, the average union company charges $67 an hour just for raw labor with nothing else on it. Yet TTC would accept these bids at $35, $36 an hour. And you're always like, okay, they made every sign of fair market labor. And and you could Google it. You can see it's $60 an hour, $70 an hour. That's what the real, between benefits and costs and union dues and all the crap that you put in the pile. How do you hire the guys at 35? There's something fishy going on. So
it's the first I've heard of this. This is very interesting.
It was like, I can't say it's an affidavit. It's just part of their tender package. You had to sign this little document that said you're paying fair market wages. They're not under collective agreement. The cities aren't.
They never were deemed a construction employer under the Act in the first place. So
everybody else has the opportunity to hire union and non-union.
They could have, and for some reason, these particular municipalities, and I'll say them again because it's been a while. So Region of Waterloo, Hamilton, City of Toronto, and Sault Ste. Marie, they were deemed construction employers under the Labor Relations Act. And for some reason, it's a huge issue for us. Particularly, it's a huge issue in all of those municipalities, but for some reason, we've been hearing from more members in Waterloo region. And last I heard, and again, I'm not a labor lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, but last I heard there was some kind of an appeal going for that construction designation ruling in the region of Waterloo. So, I mean, that's definitely the first municipality that's going to get our letter urging them to abide by the provisions, keep the level playing field, keep it open as the government has placed in this bill, and do not opt out. Do not opt out.
And I'm always nervous about heading down a union conversation. Because I don't feel like being barraged or twitted to death over unions.
Understood. Sure.
As a private employer, I don't feel like getting myself beaten up for the sake of it. Do you really think prices are going to drop because it's non-union work, or do you think it's all just going to work out in the wash anyway? I know for a fact. Again, I'm going to talk about Stadia, Glass and Door. We pay market value. So whether they were not union, and whether we were union or not, they would still be paid the same amount of money. So in today's world,
yes,
between Ontario Labour Board, human rights, the way a modern society operates, I don't think very many construction workers are suppressed wage-wise. And holy cow, there's a wicked labor shortage. You couldn't underpay anybody anyway. You couldn't underpay anybody anyway.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that.
You put in Bill 66. Awesome. Now everybody can play. But I'm not sure if there's going to be any big discount for the municipalities, other than they've opened the door to a lot of great companies. They can bring a lot of great skill sets and thinking and outside the box thinking. Because
with competition, it will drive the price down just so that they win, not so much.
So there's more competitors.
If you use the theory of competition,
but not dollar for dollar, hour for hour. I don't think it's any cheaper. I think what you end up bringing to the table, and this is going to sound bad. I think it's going to sound bad to a lot of people. I think when you bring organized labor and union, old organized labor, it's really hard to make a change. And I talk about this in our own company all the time about whether you want to be Blockbuster Video or whether you want to be Amazon. Mm-hmm. And I think unions have a tendency of not wanting to change because they need headcount. And modern companies are trying to find ways to make better jobs, lower headcount, put resources in front of their customer experience, not inside internally, re-engineer how they do business. And to re-engineer your business in a union environment is much more complicated than to re-engineer the way you do business in a private environment, because you can make changes fast and move quickly. So I think what they do, they get value engineering out of a private company. That's what they'll get out of because they can make a change really quick if they decide to pour concrete on the weekend to make quiet enjoyment for the neighbor next door. Like somebody complains and puts in a complaint, that non-union company goes, yep, no problem. We'll switch the hours, make this change, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, more flexible. Definitely.
Yeah, really fast flexibility too. Not like the union would have to go consult and everybody would have to be consulted, and the private company just calls up his guys because they're his guys, not the union, and goes, yeah, let's make that change. Okay, let's make that change. Keep everybody working. Right?
Absolutely.
Right? So this gets signed today?
Well, the royal assent on the bill is expected this afternoon, but I think the important point here, and again, being somebody who reads the fine print, this particular provision does not take effect until proclamation at a later date.
When does that happen?
We don't know, but you can kind of, again, there's a bit of a trail of breadcrumbs here, a little bit of a clue. If people have 90 days or 3 months to
they're going to wait 3 months.
Opt out, I would guess it will be at least 3 months. And of course, this is something that we will be monitoring.
Is this the province now as well? Sorry, so provincial work has to be unionized. Does the province now have the ability to go outside the collective agreement with their work? Or is it just those municipalities?
This is specific. If you look at the bill, there are specific public entities. And to my recollection, the province is not one of them.
Right.
It's, what do they call it? The mush sector. Are you familiar with that term? It's
mush?
Mush. It's like hospitals, municipalities, universities.
Yep. Yeah, okay. Right.
They call it the mush sector.
But the provincial side of it is still under the collective agreement. It's funny that the province kept their own collective agreement in play, but are allowing the municipalities off the hook. Why wouldn't Mr. Ford get the province out of that deal?
Well, I think it's just the way that particular section is worded right now, that they're just fine-tuning it.
If it works, then they'll move it up.
Who knows? But there's some other interesting things in that bill that I haven't quite gotten my head around, and I have the section of it here. Do you mind if I pull it out?
No, please. This is good fun.
There's something really interesting in here.
I just want to come do a podcast so I learn more. That's all.
Reading glasses on. This is you just got my wheels turning. So I want to read this people are going to say, wow, reading bills is fun. I'm going to start doing it. I'm going on the legislative
Everybody's
website.
going to turn over to CPAC right now and
That's right.
watch Parliament.
So this will actually, and this is in relation to what we just discussed. This is very interesting. The trade union, on the day this subsection comes into force, so this is the stuff about the construction employer deemed non-construction or construction, the trade union no longer represents those employees of the non-construction employer who are employed in the construction industry. To me, that implies immediate decertification for those municipalities that, on that list of 4, that don't opt out. That's interesting. I just thought I'd read that because I haven't quite gotten my head around that, because that
Complete
seems
decertification for the municipality.
of those employees in the union that are doing that work, based on the reading of this.
So they're no longer part of the union?
It's the union's decertified. That's my interpretation of that. If it's a union that's doing the work for one of those municipalities that I mentioned before that's deemed a construction employer, provided they don't opt out. Which to me, I found that Ryan Mallow, the other director for Ontario, we chatted about that. And we found that very, very interesting that you could actually do that in law. And again, not a labor lawyer by any stretch of the imagination. Just curious. It's interesting how that implies that you can decertify a union that way. That's my interpretation of that. I mean, somebody else might want to call in and say, Julie, you're wrong. This is the interpretation. But that's why I read it directly from the documentation.
The whole idea of becoming union and non-union, though, is really abstract anyway, because the unions have far more power than the private entrepreneur has. And you're really, when the union's upon you, you can't do anything as a non-union employer. You can't promote yourself. You can't give perks. You can't sell the idea of being non-union, and you're really forced into a union role. And the labor board puts a lot of handcuffs on the employer along that path. I've had 2 or 3 friends go union in the last 5 years, and all of it has seemed very unfair to the employer side of it. Mm-hmm. And I often wonder how we change. Unions are no better than the corporations in which they try to protect themselves from. So unions need to make profit.
But again, going back to this whole concept of change, think about it. Approximately 13% of the private sector is unionized only.
Yeah, okay.
So you're a union and you're trying to break into the private sector because there's a lot of leg room there, 87%. Shouldn't you have to put on your creative hat and find ways to do it too? It goes back to what you said earlier about people being creative. And unions tend to go to government. Like with the last government, unions came to government and said, we want card-based certification extended into different sectors. So as you know, card-based certification exists only in the construction industry.
Correct.
And to the people out there listening, what are you talking about, Julie? Essentially, it means that there's no mandatory secret ballot vote. Because the thinking behind a secret ballot vote is, okay, if some union guy's standing over my shoulder, I might be kind of scared. I'm going to sign the card.
Right.
I feel bullied. I feel threatened. So going into a private secret ballot vote, I can actually express my true feelings. But back to what I was saying about the previous government. So unions went to the previous government, and instead of maybe being creative and trying to find ways to break into the private sector, it's a free country. Try it.
Yep.
They go to government and they say, hey, change the laws, make it easier for us to unionize employees. So you're probably aware that the old bill before Bill 47, Bill 148, card-based certification was reintroduced to 3 sectors, including community services, home care, building services, temporary help agencies.
Yeah, PSWs, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird.
And Bill 47, of course, totally reversed that.
I've told my union rep, and it's funny you talk about private sector and be creative. I've told them outright, right to like nose to nose. I said, bring me a better product than I can get myself, and I'll be the poster child for your union. Mm-hmm. So bring me a better product, because really, what they're making labor a product. So bring me a better product at a better value, at a higher impact that can move and change with the dynamics of my economy. And I'll gladly go unionized.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that currently, internally, we can move faster, pay better, give more perks, get the guys to site faster, get more production out of them inside of our own circle than going into your circle. And I always tell them, give me a better product. Give me something that's an advantage to switch. And I do it. Here's the thing, though. As a private entrepreneur, I also want to be able to go, I don't like your product, and now I want to get rid of it.
Yes.
See, so I don't get to test drive the union. I don't get to go, let me try this union. Try it for 6 months. By the way, everybody in my world, for Stadia and Burn on Demand, they get to try us and they get to fire us whenever they want.
Yeah.
But not unions. You either are union for the rest of your life or you're not.
Yeah, because apparently, and again, not a labor lawyer, is a living hell. That's what
financially, mentally, for your staff, psychologically, it's awful. For everybody to de-ratify, it's an awful experience. Horrible. But I mean, if the union said to me, try it for 6 months, and they gave me a better product and a better thing, and I had the choice to opt out, see, it's the freedom of choice, right? I said this about, which is completely taken away. And then you go, okay, so we're no longer a free society. We're socialized, communized, and whatever they say goes, and that's the end of it, and that's the way you're going to live. I said this about the carbon tax that just happened with the gasoline. All right, the problem with the carbon tax isn't the carbon tax. The problem is that there's no... I, as a private consumer, forget about my business, a homeowner, resident of Ontario, I don't actually have a way to lower my carbon footprint. I don't. I mean, listen, I can put more things in the blue bin, but I still got to get to work. I still got to heat my house. My kids still want the pool at 86 degrees, right? And I don't have a way to get out of that carbon footprint. So you tell me I'm going to take some of your money, I'll give it back to you, and I'm only going to hit companies. That's really what their goal is to get everybody for gas, hand back the households, $300 each a household, hand back, and then the corporations eat that fuel cost, right? The tax cost. The problem is there's no alternative way. So if they said, do that, but here's all of our fleet at Stadia's trucks, but here's a electric powered pickup truck as an alternate, so you don't have to have the expensive gas. There's no alternate to get out of this. There's no other path. I don't know why, and I know why actually. I'm not sure why somebody didn't promote the idea of inflicting some agony on manufacturers to reduce their carbon footprint rather than consumer. Because the consumer actually can't control his carbon footprint because we can only buy what's available to us on the market. We can't just invent a way to get rid of my carbon footprint. I can't invent a way to stop those trucks from burning fuel. I just can't.
mean, if you want to talk about Orwellian math, here's some good Orwellian math for you on the carbon tax.
But you'd be better off to turn to GM and go, either get me better gas mileage or we're going to make your cars more expensive. Whatever. I'm not sure what that is, but I know that it's on the manufacturing side because you, me, general Joe consumer, can't actually control our carbon footprint. I can't tell you how much money it costs to make this little microphone in petroleum. Yes. And I can't get rid of this cost. I don't even have an ability to get rid of it. But I'm paying for it through some tax they invented, which at the end of the day, by the way, I don't trust government. And I truly believe that tax is going to roll into general coffers and just get abused like all the rest of my tax money, which is probably the largest insult to any Canadian or any Ontarian, is to know that this is eventually, all this money is just going to get sucked into general coffers in the next 2 years. And we're actually not going to know how they're using it to inspire a decreased carbon footprint.